Is there any updates on your car yet? Like, do you have it back?
I have it back, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It it was a massive problem for me, which is now solved, but it's worse for everyone else involved apart from me.
Oh, good.
So the insurance company has had to pay. So I paid £600, which is my insurance premium. I paid £600 on the car, and my insurance have gone. It was an act of God. You cost us this amount of money. I think my insurance premium is probably going to go up by about 100, 200 quid at the end of the year. I can live with that. It's not going to be fun, but I can live with it. It cost my insurance company £3,500. It cost the company that said they would repair it £8,500.
Wow.
The problem is that when the car came in, a guy from an insurance, like a mechanic, does a thing called an estimate, right? So he looks
Yeah.
at the car and goes, it's going to cost X to fix your car. So let's say he said, you've got a bump on your rear bumper, it's going to cost us £1,000 to fix. Now, normally they do overestimate. It will cost £1,000 to fix. Now, they have a 25% margin either way to stop them basically going, this car's going to cost £12 million to fix. So if they go 25% under, they get a fine. If they go 25% over, they get a fine. And then if they go over 25% over, they have to pay that as part of the fine. So they gave me a courtesy car at the cost of £100 a day, which was quoted because they thought it was going to take a week to 2 weeks. So they quoted in that it was going to cost about £100 a day, like the hire car, I think maybe 75, which I have to fuel myself, but they still have to pay for the insurance on it and they have to pay for the car. Because my car is a convertible, it has to be stored inside.
Right.
So they have to allocate a space inside for it, which obviously costs them money. They then have to charge for labor. They then also have to charge for parts and then like how long it's with them. So when they first got it, the guy estimated it. They got the car and all this kind of stuff. The mechanic who initially took it apart, it took him 3 days. So that was 3 days labor. He then ordered the parts. The parts took 2 weeks to initially come in. He then put it back together over the course of another 3 days. Found out he didn't have everything he needed, ran a load of expensive tests to find out if the chassis was straight. At which point they had it for 3 weeks, and the £3,000 is up.
Right.
So they then ordered more parts. At which point they had to wait for them to come in and all this kind of stuff. And because of all the delays and the fact that the guy put it back together, and because every time he takes it apart, if he hasn't all the stuff to put it back together properly, he has to at least put wheels on it so that he can get it out of the way so he can work on other cars. So all in all, he had it apart and back together 3 times. Every
Oh,
time he
wow.
does that, the consumables like bushes and different bits that once they're clamped in place and tightened, once you untighten them, you have to replace them. They all have to be bought from Fiat. You can't just get them off the shelf. They have to be bought from Fiat.
Good.
At which point, by the end of this process, it then has to go to an official sign-off for Fiat. Now, the company that were doing this were like, yeah, we'll send it for an official sign-off from Fiat, because basically these guys, because they do Fiat 500s all day, every day, they don't have to get the Fiat official sign-off. But there was only 4,000 Fiat 124s made, so Fiat are very, 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 very particular with how they're repaired, because they're now a Fiat heritage car, because Fiat don't want all of them just written off and thrown away and all this kind of stuff. When it got sent to Fiat, these guys had put 90 RON fuel in it, which is like a commercial grade fuel, because that's what they had. and they filled the tank because when I sent it to them, it had a full tank of fuel. So they have to give it back with a full tank of fuel. Full tank of fuel on the car is about £70. But they filled it with 90 RON.
Oh,
Now, it quite clearly states on the fuel cap, minimum 97 octane. They'd put 90 in. So the guy from Fiat checked this. On his little thing, it said, because when they brought the car in, the car wasn't running right. So he went, why isn't it running right? And they went, well, we put 90 RON in it anyway, it's minimum 97. So he then had to, charging the company, drain the tank, drain the lines, clean the spark plugs, and then refill the tank with 97 octane, at which point they then delivered it back to the guys with a sticker on it, saying this car is not certified by Fiat, signed the document, gave it back to them, at which point they could give it back to me, all of which took about 9 weeks. And every single day the car was with me, it was every single day their courtesy car was with me, that was costing them £75. So you can now see where the cost came from. But because it went over that £3,500, the insurance company will not, they'll go, no, you've gone over. This is your fault, you have to pay for this. So to fix my car, for the privilege of fixing my car, this company has been charged about £6,500.
extra, right?
Extra.
On top of the 3+ grand that your insurance company is already covering. Wow.
Yep.
So you're looking at about 9, almost 10 grand.
Yeah.
To fix your car. That's not coming out of your pocket.
No. Not coming out of my pocket, not coming out. I called my insurance company because I basically got a bill that said I'm to pay £600 but showed almost 10 grand. And I called up my insurance and went, what the hell? You told me this was going to cost me 3. This is going to ruin my insurance premium. And they went, no, don't. Look at it again. And it shows a breakdown and it shows charge to Marshmallow Insurance, which is my insurance company, this amount of money. Charge to G Hosking, this amount of money. Charge to
everyone else.
Repair company, this amount. And I went, oh. And she went, yeah, and explained what I'd just been explained. And it was quite funny.
I can imagine. Well,
I was enjoying it.
Well, we wish better luck next week to the everyone who touched your car in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Or more. What is that? Yeah, two and a bit months.
2 and a bit months.
Welcome to Better Luck next week. Of course, we've had Gavin's car corner, and I guess that kind of because we didn't have that in the last couple of podcasts.
No,
we didn't have time for that segment, but we brought it back.
And I having guests this time.
I guess that'll be it for that.
The old 2 gunslingers.
Yeah, it's just the 2 of us now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Back to the OG, which is fine. You know, you got to go back to your roots now and then, and it is episode. What's that?
This is the foundation of the greatness of the podcast built on.
It is. And it is episode 2 of season 2. If you are confused as to where episode 1 is, all 6 of you, episode 1.
25 we're averaging.
On some video, on some listens, yes. But so for whatever reason, when I was exporting episode 1, it would, the audio from the video would cut out after about 20 minutes.
Oh.
Though when I exported it audio only, it was fine. So I did that twice and it did the same thing twice and I gave up. So episode 1 is on Spotify as our all of our episodes as of the Super Bowl preview. So if you're missing episode 1, it is on Spotify, where that is a full episode with Sean and Bella. And it's jam-packed. We discussed all the refereeing stuff, which we will have more of, as you can see, because I haven't taken down the official's jersey from back there. I would have if more things hadn't happened in the NHL, which we'll get to in a little while. But it is
also it's Easter. It's got a valid point being there for Formula One as well, hasn't it?
And we'll get to that in a second too. I did just want to say Happy Easter, everyone.
Easter.
It is Good Friday, and be Easter Sunday in a couple of days, Easter Monday as well. That's why I have mini eggs in the background as well, which I've been gloriously munching on, which has apparently made my face break out slightly into this Illuminati triangle on my face. Isn't that strange? Where like you break out and it like breaks out in a pattern? Like, what is this?
The one that gets me, and I will shave this monstrosity off my face before Monday.
I wasn't going to say anything, but
it's getting a bit aggressive. Is this beard gets oiled to keep it nice and moisturized and stuff like that. If I shave my face, I get spots.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
I've been able to avoid getting like razor burn generally because I shaved yesterday, right? You can tell.
Yep.
And I generally seem to be able to avoid it, but I do get the odd one on the neck, right? I feel like the neck's pretty hard to avoid, but I'm sure there's loads of products out there that somebody would come and tell me to use and to make it better. But let's talk about those rules, starting with Formula One. We had the first Grand Prix, hooray!
That was a very good one. It was good. If the entirety of the F1 year is going to be like this, where I would say that everyone within the top 12 is all within punching, I would say like that top 12 apart. I'd say the top 8 could be rearranged in any order, and the top 12 is going to be a little bit interesting. There's that fighting region for points, and then there's that top 8 where I think, depending on the day, as this season goes on, any one of those 8 could be in the lead or winning the race. But
it did get rearranged throughout the race as well. Yeah. I mean, there were multiple people at the back end of top 10 fighting for points, right? I mean, Stroll was almost out of it at one point. Vettel got bumped out of the points. Alonso, I think, wasn't Alonso 11th? Don't have it in front of me.
He was 11th for a bit, and then he got DNF.
Oh, right. Yeah, because
we did have a lot of we had 4 DNFs in this one, which I mean, not great. So if we start Mazepin, obviously,
Mazepin just kind of lost control.
Well, so let's talk about this then, because I had quite an interesting conversation, which is my now most upvoted comment on Reddit, currently at 6,000 upvotes.
Wow.
Because mate, it was brilliant. I ruined some people's lives. So the first thing was that people were turning around and saying Mazepin's terrible. Mazepin is not terrible. Whatever we feel about him personally as a driver, that's our own opinions. Now, if you watch the onboards from qualifying, which I suggest you do, Jared, when he's going into the corner, I'm trying to use my hands as a visual representation.
I did see it. I did see it.
So going into turn 1, if this is the steering wheel, so he holds the steering wheel. Bell's thing is spazzing out. He holds the steering wheel perfectly straight, touches the brakes, and before he's done any adjustment with the wheel, the car is already backwards.
Yeah.
So there's more to this than that. There is much more to this than that. And I would also like to say, just as well, there's been a lot of people that have been criticizing Mazepin for being a paid driver. And the point where this kind of went nuts on Reddit was someone who turned around and went, we wouldn't have had paid drivers in the likes of Hunt and Lauda's day. Well, James Hunt was funded for the entirety and most of his career, including his time at McLaren, by a wealthy aristocrat who did it because he liked to have parties. So that's a paid driver. And Niki Lauda's family owned a bank, were very wealthy, and his initial start in Formula One was paid for by himself. So any kind of stipulation that we should judge Mazepin differently because he's a paid driver, well, I've just pointed out 2 of the sport's greats, which is, I don't think many people would argue on that. were technically paid drivers. Now, you know, this was Mazepin's first race in Formula One, and he spun. I think the only honest difference between what happened with him and Mick Schumacher was where he spun, there wasn't a wall to hit.
Well, and that's why I said he lost control. It's not like he spun the car out. The car, I mean, I don't know how else to say it. The car lost control, and he spun. Like, and to your point about paid drivers, I mean, I don't think sports gets anywhere without paid anyone.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain point where, I mean, he's still not going to be in Formula One if he's not Formula One caliber. It's not like he was a bum in the mid pack of Formula 2 and just paid his way into Formula One. That didn't happen. He was in the top of Formula 2 for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So
mean,
like that's a bit of a dumb argument to have.
I mean, these are
with
with argument, because some people would dispute this, the best 20 racing drivers on the planet at the moment.
Right.
And today he was number 20, but that doesn't mean he's not great. If we go a bit further up, I think we should just work through like most of the guys. Fernando Alonso, I mean, don't really know what happened halfway through the race. Alpine just brought him in.
Well, yeah, his car just kind of gave out, right?
The issue with the brakes. I don't know what happened with Latifi.
Alpine seems to be having problems. Yeah, Latifi's, I don't know, his car just kind of gave out too, I guess. And then
Pierre Gasly, if I'm honest, had a poor race. He didn't have a poor race, but he just was in the wrong place at the wrong time at every point. He got his front wing taken off with him and Daniel Ricciardo had an incident, and then the back of his car got hit by Sebastian Vettel. So both ends kind of got hit at once.
Well, that was Ocon that got hit.
Oh no, Pierre Gasly got hit from behind as well by someone else.
Yeah, because Ocon and Vettel were fighting for position for a while, and then Vettel just, after claiming the inside, Vettel then decided to take the outside and just smashed into Ocon's rear. It was very weird. I don't know what Vettel was thinking when he did that. It was kind of a brain dead move. But I mean, Vettel, there's two sides of it, because Vettel seems to be getting a reputation a bit of being a crasher now on the course, but he's still one of the classiest drivers, because there was a clip at the end where he went and apologized to Ocon and shook his hand and everything. And both cars did finish the race still, despite
both cars finished.
Yeah, because it was pretty late in the race, so they were able to push it to the end. But just strange the way that happened.
So if we just move on, Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, George Russell, Esteban Ocon, Giovinazzi, Kimi. I mean, all fairly good. Nothing massive to report. Lance Stroll coming in 10th, quite a good drive. And then my new favourite, my boo, Yuki Tsunoda. Because I'm sorry, but in his first race in Formula One, not only did he almost out-qualify Lewis Hamilton in Q2, which was just a bonsai lap. Let's go through the people he had to overtake to get to where he was. Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, and then finally Lance Stroll. Now, Lance Stroll, okay, we'll ignore from the thing. Let's just say those names again. Alonso, Vettel, Raikkonen.
Well, and the best thing that made him immediately lovable was when he pulled up to the grid and drove past his grid spot, because he went, oh, well, that's mine, that's the free one. And then got there and went, oh shit, this is supposed to be Sergio Perez's spot, but he's starting in the pit. I've got to back up now. Fully reverses back to his spot. And then the race happens.
Yeah.
Formula One posts that on their Instagram. and he
Mhm.
goes and comments a shushy emoji in the comments.
But no, it showed to me
Brilliant.
that because okay, yeah, in ninth, great, brilliant finish in your first thing, and that Alpha Tauri is obviously very good. But the fact that he went past some of the some of the greats in this sport, like Kimi Raikkonen, Vettel, and Alonso, will go down as some of the greatest Formula One drivers of this era, and he passed them. And it wasn't they let him by; it was for position, and he overtook them.
Yeah, he fought them
Which I
and
just
got past.
that's brilliant. He also just has this dramatic style to driving the car. Like if you watch some of his onboards from qualifying, my favourite one is in turn 3, which is a kind of a dogleg right-hander. Everyone else is coming in and braking at about the 70-yard board. And he does that his first 2 laps. And then on his third lap, he brakes 30 yards later, turns the car in, does a 4-wheel skid. At what point you see his helmet look out the side of the car, gathers it all up somehow, bounces off the curb and goes along. And then his engineer goes, "You okay?" And he went, "Yep, found the limit," and keeps driving. Just like, oh, when I'm looking out of the passenger window, I found the limit. Okay, cool. And he just,
I can't go any more sideways than this, or I'll be backwards.
he's just like, cool. You then, I mean, if we look, and this is the top 8 I'm talking about. So Carlos Sainz Jr., very, very good race from him. I think he's still getting used to that Ferrari a little bit. Daniel Ricciardo did have damage, so it's reported that whatever happened with
Was it
yeah,
Gasly, right?
him, yeah, Gasly in front of him, the bits of wing went underneath his floor and damaged his floor and gave him a severe reduction of downforce, which Daniel said he was struggling with the car the entire race. And then when he then spoke to McLaren, was like, "Look, guys, first race, I'll get on top of it. I'm really sorry." And they went, "Yeah, your floor was damaged." And he went, "Oh, thank God." Because evidently he thought he hadn't done very well. Charles Leclerc is showing that whatever was wrong with that Ferrari last year, he's evidently managed to switch back on. Whatever switch was off or something like that, that Ferrari is quick again. Sergio Perez is making a habit of being able to come from last to a very good position.
It's like he's good or something.
It's very good. Very good.
I still can't believe that people were actually suggesting that he was going to be out of Formula One this year.
It would have been a crying shame, an absolute crying shame. Because obviously whatever happened with that Red Bull, there is something going on with Red Bull, but I don't want to comment too much because there was nothing official about it. Because obviously on the parade lap, his car's going around the corner and just the lights go out, which for Sergio Perez must have been a horrible way to start the race because he's like, right, I've qualified 5th, I can push here a bit, and then you just watch the lights go out on the screen and
go, "Hello."
Which when it does start back up, he goes straight through the thing and goes again, and manages to climb his way back up to 5th, which is very good. I think that it's going to be very interesting from him because I hope he'll be able to slot that car in and we'll have a bit more of a race the next couple of times, because that was the thing that allowed Mercedes to beat Red Bull this time, because they had 2 drivers in top 3. They could basically go either side of Verstappen and know that one of the strategies would work and they'd beat him. Next up, we've got Lando Norris, who I think has turned a corner. He went forward in this race, forward very well, and admittedly the only person in front of him, and was only in front of him by about 10-ish seconds, was Valtteri Bottas. And I think that if we get 2 McLarens that are on song at a circuit that suits McLaren, we could very much see them a lot. I think they're third in the constructors at the moment, but I think McLaren could be bringing the challenge to Red Bull, maybe Mercedes this year. I'm excited because we don't just have Mercedes disappearing off into the distance Red Bull's following them and everyone else fighting for everything else. There are possibilities now that on certain circuits and in certain situations, a team will be able to challenge them. It's not like last year where we need a circuit that suits Red Bull so that they can catch, because the circuits that suit Red Bull, good. The circuits that don't suit Ferrari are going to be those circuits that suit Red Bull. So at different circuits, different people are going to be quicker and different people are going to be able to challenge them, which I'm really looking forward to. Valtteri Bottas, third, I mean, that's... I don't really know what I can say about that. Expected. And then Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, not the order that at certain points in this race I thought that was going to happen. But it's a little bit interesting how this ended up, because I think this will lead us into the conversation now. Turn 4, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was turn 4 where the track limits were being pushed basically by everyone for the entirety of the race until suddenly, like that.
Yeah.
I like what you said at the beginning, where you said if Formula One Grand Prix are like this throughout the season, I'm very excited. So am I. However, they've slipped back into the pattern already of, oh, it's all wonderful and great, and oh, very exciting until the marshals step in and ruin it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in this one again, because you have a rule where you cannot go beyond the track limits. Period.
Yeah, well, the rule is by the letter of the law, you are allowed 2 wheels over that white line.
Right.
And then the inside wheels are allowed to touch the line.
So you have to still have at least 2 wheels on the track line.
Yeah.
But at this particular turn, because of the way it's designed, it actually makes it's actually faster to go off the track completely.
Yeah.
And so people were doing that for the whole race. Everyone was. Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, you go down the grid. They were all doing it because they figured out in qualifying, oh, well, this is actually, a 100th of a second faster if I go like this. So they did it. And then the second that Verstappen made a move on Hamilton, it happened to be in this corner. To me, I don't know. It's a pretty judgment call whether or not Hamilton forced him off the track, because Hamilton is right there. Like, there's no room for Verstappen to still be on the track where Hamilton is. So you could argue, certainly I would argue, that Verstappen may or may not have been pushed off the track. But regardless, Verstappen gets ahead because you gain an advantage by going wider on turn 4. So then he was told that he had to give the place back because he gained an advantage by going wide on turn 4. Well, everyone did that for the whole race.
Yeah.
So everybody should have been penalized the second it was going on to begin with, because you've already set the precedence of, oh, well, it's okay because you're not passing anyone. Well, that's not in the rule. You gain an advantage every time you do it, regardless of whether or not you're passing someone. Like, it's...
The thing for me for this is it's difficult where the line is it shouldn't be difficult where the line is drawn. There's a white line around the circuit, and these teams have every single little piece of GPS technology on every single piece of the car. They know where it is. They know where the car is. They know what it's doing. They know they know what the driver's pulse is, for God's sake. So they know when he goes over track limits. Now, for practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, qualifying, and 38 laps of this race, no one had a single problem. No one brought up track limits.
Nope.
You've got cars going going a foot, 2 feet off the circuit, not track. Not cool. Now, it's difficult because without both onboards here and the telemetry, I can't tell you. But what I can postulate and think is that 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, who knows where he's putting the car. Anyone who says any otherwise or anything like that, go, oh, well, the car drifted or stuff like that. he is not a 7-time world champion because things happen. He's a 7-time world champion because he knows exactly where to put the car and what to do with it. Now, he knew Verstappen was hunting him down. Evidently, the Mercedes did not have a dial that they could turn up, or didn't have the pace in the car to pull away.
Right. He knew that Verstappen was going to catch him. There was no doubt that Verstappen was going to catch him.
He knew as soon as Verstappen, he knew where Verstappen was going to go past him, because they all knew that. Now, if I'm Lewis Hamilton, I know that if Verstappen gets past me, I need to do it in a way that, yes, he gets past me, but I then need to be able to overtake him. And the only way to do that is to force him onto the dirty side of the track, over the line, and over to the dirty rubber, at which point he picks up loads of stuff on his wheels, and it slows him down. Because if I'm Lewis Hamilton, I know that track limits haven't been enforced the entire race. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my normal line, and the only way, if Verstappen wants it, he's got to go outside on the crack, on the rubble, on all that kind of stuff, and pick that up on his tires. Because then the next couple of corners, he's got dirt on his tires. He's not going to be able to take them as quick. I've got a chance of getting back. So as I go around the corner, I see Verstappen in my mirrors. I'm going to let the car come wide, because if Hamilton wanted to, he could have brought that line tighter. He could have touched the brakes and it would have brought in. He could have done one of a million things. He put the car where he wanted to put the car, then sent Verstappen over the rubble, under the expectation that Verstappen was going to go past him, as he did. Hamilton then, for the short period of time that it was, maintained the gap within a second, waiting for the next DRS zone, where he knows that a Verstappen with dirty tyres is going to have to brake earlier. He can go past, and we have a race for the last 4 laps. Now, really, at that point, when Verstappen went round the outside and stuff like that, the stewards should have stepped back and gone, racing.
Yeah, it's happened the whole race.
Yes. And if to me, I think one of the reasons that Red Bull turned around and said, no, you've got to let him pass Max and all this kind of stuff, was that they were partially expecting at the end of the race an investigation to go, well, did he pass him off the circuit? Now, if I'm a steward and Mercedes come in and say he passed us off the circuit, I'm just going to turn around with a Polaroid of their car 3 feet off the track with a lap number and just flick through and go, here's lap 1, you went off the track, 2, lap 3, lap 4, lap 5, lap 6. I can go the entire Grand Prix with your cars going 3 foot off the circuit. So the fact that he's passed you 5 foot over the circuit is a moot point. If we don't penalise Hamilton for going, penalise anyone for going a yard, 2 yards off the circuit, we can't penalise Verstappen because he went 5 yards off the circuit. Can't. So to me, this should have been the other way round. But actually, then you've got Max Verstappen with dirty tyres, who's just expended all of his energy getting past Lewis Hamilton, and you've got Lewis Hamilton behind him with almost, hard tyre but level pegging with 4 laps to go. This could have gone either way. And to be honest, at one point, with how they were dicing with each other, I thought it's going to be a very interesting podium with Valtteri Bottas, Lando Norris, and Sergio Perez on it. So
you thought they were going to crash, eh?
Absolutely. I thought this was a little bit of a whoopsie. I think that going into the next circuit, we need to enforce track limits, because that's why they're there. Because otherwise, if we throw them away, the drivers will just basically drive however they want.
Yeah, the driver, they're not going to care. This is the thing. The second you don't uphold the rule from the beginning, the athletes are going to take advantage of it. It's just how the world works. If you say this is okay, people are going to go, okay, I can do this now. This is okay. It's like the whole COVID thing that's going on. Ontario keeps opening up restrictions and loosening things off. So people are going to go, okay, I can do stuff now. And then the government turns around and blames us for doing the stuff that they allowed us to do. Anyways, too much politics. I apologize.
I guarantee you, in practice 1, Lewis Hamilton did 1 lap where he went inside track limits on that lap, on that circuit. And then he did one lap where he went outside track limits on thing 4 and waited for the stewards to go track limits thing 4. Don't let it happen.
And they did it.
At which point he went, okay, well then probably they've said, well, looked at the telemetry. All right, it's faster if you go over track limits on turn. And Lewis would have gone, well, I'll try it again in this, and I'll try one of the first laps in qualifying and see if anyone pulls it up. At which point, no one pulled it up. The team went, cool, that's the line.
Yeah.
No one's going to say anything.
Yeah, you manage the players, you manage the athletes by calling the rules. It's that simple. And we'll get into that more a bit later with hockey and whatnot. But so the final place, personally, I thought this was Verstappen's Grand Prix to win, and it was robbed from him by the marshals and the stewards. But so it was Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas. I believe I predicted Verstappen, Hamilton, Ricardo.
Yeah.
So I get 2 points.
Yeah.
Out of 6 because I have Hamilton and Verstappen on the podium, but not in the right order.
So I get 1 point because I get 2 points as well because I had Hamilton, Norris, Ricardo.
Yes,
didn't go very well.
your grids are always very interesting.
Yeah, well, I like to make it a bit fun.
Well, you gave the top 5, and if I remember correctly, you didn't even have Bottas in the top 5, and you had Verstappen like 5th, and I was like, "Are you okay, guys?"
Well, I fell for my own thing, which was in qualifying. It made me laugh. Everyone was like, "Mercedes aren't going to do well. The Mercedes aren't going to do well." Q3, Hamilton puts it on pole, first lap out, and I just put my pen down and went, "Really?" Because it was like for the entirety of like pre-season testing, entire practice. Oh, we're slow. And literally, you could have taken a little sandbag out of that Mercedes for the joke. Like if I was Mercedes and I was doing the joke before I sent it out in Q3, I would have taken a literal sandbag out of somewhere of the car, placed it on the floor in the garage, and then sent the car out.
That would have been a really great April Fool's gag, and it's a shame that April Fool's isn't today.
Yeah.
For qualifying for the next Grand Prix, because they should have done it like that.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be a very interesting year because we go to different places at different times.
It's not in the same order as it always is, right? We touched on that last week.
My one outside hope is that at some point, obviously, normally the first race of the season is at Australia, and Daniel Ricciardo's never won it.
Right.
So I would like for him to win his home race.
They're going to change that up as well, but maybe we'll discuss that when Australia's a little bit more approaching. We're already going back to Emilia Romagna, if I'm saying that correctly, but it's not till the 18th, so we've got a couple weeks actually of break already. So each team is going to have an opportunity to tweak things after this first Grand Prix. I mean, obviously, Mazepin is going to be at Haas to make sure that his car is in working order again.
Yeah.
But let's carry on now.
My
I think that's good. We can't really preview a Grand Prix 2 weeks from now.
No, my favorite thing though from this Bahrain Grand Prix is when Romain Grosjean did a live stream and was actually there and doing some punditry and stuff like that. And when he was talking to Sky and talking through SkyPad about a lap, when he went past the barrier, he went, "So that's my barrier." And they went, "What?" And he went, "Yeah, it's mine." And everyone went, "What?" And he went, "It's mine." And everyone looked at him confused. He went, "Well, I went through it. If you're going to name it after anyone, it should be mine." And everyone just kind of gave him a confused look and carried on. And my favorite thing is Romain Grosjean going, "That's my barrier." Of everything that he wants named after him and all of this kind of stuff and all these things, changed in Formula One. It's my barrier.
He wants the barrier that almost killed him named after him.
I mean, if it was me, I would have the barrier cut and I would have it in my home.
Just
Like I'd have
over,
it as like
just
a
over
wall
your
piece.
bed somewhere.
Yeah,
Use the right screws.
yeah.
Right. There's absolutely nothing going on in the NFL right now.
No.
Nobody's signed. It's kind of the dead week after the initial rush of free agency.
Julian Edelman scared all of the Patriots fans.
By saying he might go to Tampa.
Well, no, he just posted a GIF which was Captain Jack Sparrow saying it's a pirate's life for me, and the Patriots fandom panicked.
That's
Like,
very
scared.
funny.
Like that's the best April Fools I've seen.
I was going to say, was that yesterday?
Yeah, I was worried.
That's very good.
Like,
I did think it was. I had mixed reactions for Tom Brady's because he posted because he's a part owner of the Tampa Bay Rays, right, the baseball team.
Yeah,
and that because they have literally negative fans, like nobody goes to Tampa Bay Ray games, nobody at all. I'm pretty sure the Florida Panthers have more attendance at this point than the Tampa Bay Rays. But he's a part owner, and they split some of not last season, the season before, I think they split some of that time between Tampa Bay and Montreal that used to have a baseball team, the Montreal Expos.
yeah.
And so he posted that he's so excited to bring baseball back to Montreal and to be the first owner, manager, and player of any team in existence. And all this stuff, because he was actually drafted by the Expos. Because this happens a lot where NFL players, NCAA graduates kind of go, well, am I going to play baseball or am I going to play football? Because they seem to do both or seem to have done both.
Oppose each other.
Right. They seem to just kind of go together. So he was drafted by the Expos, funny enough. And now he's a part owner of the Tampa Bay Rays. So I thought it was funny on some levels, but on other levels, I just felt bad for the people of Montreal because they did effectively have their team ripped from them by a selfish owner that moved them to Washington. That was the sole reason that he bought them, was to bankrupt them in Montreal and move them to Washington. Yeah, it was actually pretty shady how that all happened and pretty disappointing. But so he toys with poor Montreal. I mean, because I think they deserve another baseball team. They love their baseball in Quebec and Atlantic Canada as well. Like the half of the Toronto Blue Jays fan base is out there. Because they went, well, we've lost our Expos now, so I guess we'll just cheer for the Blue Jays because that's the only team in Canada. But I thought that was pretty funny. That's about as much news that's in the NFL right now. That's about
it. Should we move on to the NHL?
So I showed you something.
But should I comment on it first?
Because no, well, I'll preface it. I'll preface the whole thing first. So this past week, actually not even 48 hours ago, the Colorado Avalanche were playing the Arizona Coyotes in Colorado, and there was a bit of a scuffle between Nathan MacKinnon and Connor Garland. And Nathan MacKinnon is a bona fide star player in the NHL who, because of the way the NHL is officiated, which we discussed last week, the Stars do not draw enough penalties and basically get abused for their entire careers, especially if they don't have a goon on the ice to protect them. I mean, that's why Wayne Gretzky was so successful to a degree. You can argue that a contributing factor to it was that he had a big bruiser named Marty McSorley that would just go around and beat up anyone that tried anything against Gretzky. Right. If you went on the ice and you ran over Gretzky a little hard, you can bet that Marty McSorley on his next shift is going to come out and cave your face in with his fist.
Yeah.
So now that doesn't really happen anymore because the game is moved so much more to skill-based players. The the onus is on the referees and the officials to protect the star players, and they don't, because they reward dirty teams by penalizing clean teams more when they play dirty teams, because it's got to be fair or whatever, or they just let them get away with everything. And Nathan MacKinnon is one of those guys that anyone that attacks him basically gets away with murder. So unless you just, remove Nathan MacKinnon's hand with your stick, you'll probably get away with it. So he was taking some abuse, and specifically Connor Garland had run him over in front of the net earlier in the game, which there was no call on, which, I mean, there could have been. It was a clean enough hit, but I would have to look at it again to define whether or not there could have been a penalty on it. But regardless, you get frustrated when you think you have an offensive opportunity and you get cleaned out, right?
Yeah.
So MacKinnon's in frustration. He notices that Garland is battling in the corner. So he goes in to start battling with him, and the two start to tussle with each other, start grabbing at each other. And, by this point, the referee should be calling roughing on both of them, but he hasn't.
Yeah.
MacKinnon rips Garland's helmet off, at which point other players start joining the hullabaloo. Yeah. And then because MacKinnon's ripped Garland's helmet off, Garland gets some separation between them so that they stop ruffling with each other.
Yeah.
And MacKinnon underarm tosses Garland's helmet at his face. And it hits him right here as he tries to catch it. Now, this was a 10-minute misconduct in the game for Nathan MacKinnon, so he sits in the box for 10 minutes and then he can come back. Okay. And then he was fined the maximum fine of $5,000 under the NHL CBA. Now, the other thing is that Connor McDavid, another one of these stars that gets, violently abused throughout his entire career, was in a similar situation. He was getting abused in a game against the Montreal Canadiens, the Edmonton Oilers captain, then decided to throw a late hit on one of the young stars who was granted abusing him on the Montreal Canadiens, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And he the puck's already gone, so it's a late hit, so it's definitely interference, but he kind of drives, he goes to hit him, and then he drives through his shoulder and up into Kotkaniemi's face. He got a penalty for it and then was fined $5,000, the maximum under the CBA. So what the NHL has effectively done here is said that throwing a piece of equipment at an opponent is the same as a high hit. And a lighter high hit. I mean, I've seen people get fined, people get less punishment for doing worse than Connor McDavid did. And at the time I thought, maybe McDavid should get a 1-game suspension, whatever. But having looked at it more, maybe the fine is justified. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that you get rid of a head check no matter how it happens. And hold these guys accountable.
We've had that argument until we're blue in the face about you get hit in the head. That should be simple. The thing for me with this one is that you've got a larger guy, because I don't know the players' names and everything like that, but you've got a larger guy who's maybe an excellent hockey player, but part of his job and part of his debrief and all that kind of stuff, in my opinion, will have been, you need to make this guy not have the best game. Now, if he wanted to, he could have gone out to him, dropped the glove, and another fight with him, but he didn't do that because that just doesn't succeed.
Right, and that's usually not what stars do, right? Nathan MacKinnon's not really going to fight someone because he needs his wrists intact so that he can score goals.
Yeah, he puts his arm around this guy, he's shoving this guy around. He puts his arm over this guy's head, puts him in a headlock. The helmet comes off, he skates away with his helmet. The teams are kind of doing that tussle. Now, that guy's purpose there is to wind this guy up. Now, this wasn't, to me, from how it looks, an aggressive, I'm going to throw this at your head to hurt you.
Right.
To me, they're chuntering backwards and forwards. They're winding each other up. This guy's job is that he's a senior player in the NFL, in the NHL. He's winding this guy up. That's what he's doing. He's winding this guy up. He's putting him off his game. And then to finish it all off, the final straw for me would be, right, chuck his helmet back at him and kind of throw it at him, hit him in the guts of the face. And it goes a bit wrong, and he hits him in the face. For me, this shouldn't have been allowed to get this far, really.
Nope.
And the other thing is, okay, it's all down to subtext and stuff like that, because if you wrote down the bullet points of this, 2 players went into the corner, were verbally abusing each other, one ripped off another's helmet, and then threw it at the other player. Now, if you have that paragraph, then you could look at that and go, suspension for 5 games, big fine, all that kind of stuff. But this is a bit different to that. The thing for me is that there needs to be an element of holding the more experienced players a bit more accountable, because this more experienced player has probably about, 30, 40 pounds on this kid.
Connor Garland is both smaller and lighter than Nathan MacKinnon, absolutely.
Yeah. So the guy is the senior player is completely in control of this altercation, and the throwing of the helmet is unnecessary. Now, I would put the onus on the senior player and say, you were roughing him. Not to a point. I would almost have this as a verbal warning. Like, this can't happen again, 1 game suspension, $5,000 fine. It makes sense to me, but the problem is that you're not, okay, yeah, $5,000 fine is probably going to hurt his pocket, but
he makes $10 million a year, not really.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He's probably gone back to his coach's office. His coach went, well done, you put that kid off his game. You've succeeded in what you needed to achieve.
Yeah, this goes back to a whole cultural issue around hockey where you praise dirty play because it throws people off. You are allowing stuff to slip away simply because what the NHL seems to do is if a player is penalized justifiably in game, they don't take extra enforcement.
Yeah.
So for this, the NHL decided that the 10-minute misconduct was enough of a punishment in the game for this penalty, which they then went, so we'll just fine him then.
No, the thing is that you have to decide to go 1 or 2 ways. Either you need to take a step back, at which point the teams will then have to have a bruiser on the team, because if you've got a guy like this young star, the conversations with this young star shouldn't have been like, if you're not going to enforce this, then really that young star should have been able to skate back to his bench, go to the muscle-bound guy with hand for hands and go, he's winding me up, he's putting me off my game, knock 7 shades out of it.
Yeah.
At which point that to me is resolved, because if you're not going to do the other side, which is big fine game, you basically got to make it so that the team goes, as much as we want to put him off his game by winding him up and pushing him around a bit, we can't lose this guy for 1 game and this big a fine. If you're not going to do that, then you need to allow them to do the latter.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, well, such and such, your star skates back to the bench, such and such has been winding me up, go knock 7 shades out of him, at which point this guy gets his retribution. Because going into the next game, if the coach turns around and goes, hey Phil, I want you to wind up their star player, Phil's going to go, I'd do it, coach, but, Punchy McPunchface is also on that team. And did you see what they did to Pete last week? Pete wound up Punchy McPunchface's star player, and Punchy McPunchface knocked him out, and then you just cut to Phil in the corner then you have to protect these stars somehow, because you're going to have really skilled players, and you're going to if enforce the stuff to protect them, then you need to allow either way. Because the reason you said that Wayne Gretzky was so good was because he had a big guy. And I'm sure that there were quite a few people that had shots lined up on Wayne Gretzky and could have gone, I could ruin this man's career with an elbow right now.
Yeah.
But if I do that, I'm going to be drinking my meals through a straw for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that puts that little bit of, I'm not going to do that. So if this guy had a bruiser with him and, this guy's just chucked his helmet back at him, you're not going to do that because the very next play you're on the ice, even if you do come out 10 minutes and 5,000 pounds lighter, the next thing is the team's bruiser is going to skate up to you and go, yeah, sorry, bud, I've got to deal with this.
Yeah, you're going to get your face caved in.
So they have to pick either way. But if the NHL doesn't start doing one, I can guarantee you the teams are going to start doing the other.
What my other thing too is when I remember when I saw this, what I thought back to when that Cleveland Browns defensive lineman swung his helmet at Ben Rudolph, right? Or what? That's Aaron Rudolph, whatever his name. The backup quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now it's not on the same level because that guy personally attacked him. Right.
If you put both of these in the bullet points are very similar, aren't
they? The bullet points come out similar. That's my issue, is that you used a piece of equipment as a weapon. I say weapon lightly for the hockey part of it.
But still, he did throw a piece of plastic.
You threw a piece of player's own equipment at him. I don't care how heavily you threw it or not. You should be throwing the book at this guy.
That's another one where it comes down to these rules there's too much to do there. Because really, in reality, then you should make that a basic rule. If you use a piece of equipment, or throw javelin, whatever, another piece of equipment back at another player, and that whatever happens or not, £10,000 fine, £15,000 fine.
Well, yeah, and it's already in the rules to a degree where, I mean, if a guy's on a breakaway and you're a defender and you like throw your stick to try and knock the puck away from him, he gets a penalty shot. So there's already rules for not throwing shit at people. Yeah. But then they don't uphold the rule when somebody actually throws something at someone.
Yeah, and then the problem around this rule and all this kind of stuff is then sometimes teams do horrible things. I was watching one of the hockey highlights recently where a goalie uplifted his own goal.
Yeah, and that's been made illegal now too.
Yeah, but the thing for me was that when it was explained to me, I kind of sat there and thought, no, actually, the goalie made a smart play. Because he had a 2-on-1 breakaway. If he lifts the goal, the team gets a penalty, at which point he's got a 1-on-1. So by him doing that, he's improved his situation. So you've got to make these things so clear that it can't be argued with. Because the thing for me is, if let's make the rule now. Let's say the rule is if you throw a piece of equipment at another player, $15,000 fine. The only situation where this is,
I want a suspension in there.
Yeah, $15,000 and a 2-game suspension. And then
that's the base. That's the base.
That's the base, and then I would put.
Then there's the degree.
Yeah, so that's the you chuck your helmet at someone, $15,000, 2-game fine to start with. Then ref's discretion for further penalties.
Yeah, and it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter what the referee calls on the ice. The referee could call 2 minutes, or the referee could throw you out of the game, or the referee could do absolutely nothing. You threw a piece of equipment at another player. You get a 2-game suspension and the maximum fine as the base limit.
The only situation to me where this can be overruled is if another player's being nice, skates along the ice, picks up a guy's helmet and chucks it back to him as he's going off the ice. But even then, You simply turn around to the other player who had a helmet chucked at him and caught it and went, was he just chucking that back at you? And the guy will go, yeah, end on.
Yeah. I think you can also tell if a player picks up a helmet and goes, here you go, buddy. It's going to be a nice little lob.
Yeah.
And the guy can easily catch it. It's not going to be an underarm softball pitch thrown at his face.
It's not going to be an underarm softball pitch to a guy you've spent 20 minutes winding up.
Yeah. And also the guy who, caught you with your head down earlier in the game and made you pay for it because you were being a dingus.
I would also say that one of the things that needs to be a bit more enforced, and it is a little bit in rugby, is the senior player aspect. Because, and there's an element to this in Formula One, there's an element to this in rugby, that because we had it before and stuff like that, where I think in his first year in Formula One, Max Verstappen got hit by, wasn't Perez, I think it was Alonso. They clipped. And it was one of those things where you could have called it either way, but what Formula One did is they went, Alonso, you're the senior driver. You've been here a lot longer. You should have taken responsibility. You have more control over that situation than Max does. So the onus is on you. And I think actually Alonso got a bit more of a telling off than Verstappen did. Now, in this situation, for me, they both tussled and stuff out and wound themselves up. I would put a little bit of the onus on, if this happened between two players, it's their first year in the league, there's a lot of, pressure, there's a lot of things going on and all this kind of stuff, then I'd go, okay, both of you are equally to blame. But in this situation, you've got a senior player and you've got a younger player. I would be turning around to the senior player and going, you knew what you were doing, him less so. So the onus is on you more, and you put that pressure on the older players, one, to set the example, and two, to not allow bad behavior to continue over the course of years.
Now, what I will say is it applies sort of to this situation. I think it's a good idea. So for this situation, you would have to look at years in the NHL. This is Connor Garland's third year in the NHL, but he's the same age as Nathan MacKinnon. But Nathan MacKinnon's been in the league longer. So you want to look at it from years in the league and not necessarily age, which I still think you were going for that anyways. But
that was my
aim. Just wanted to clarify for people.
But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with rugby and stuff like that. Like if you're playing rugby, because in the UK, as soon as you go over the age of 21, then it kind of goes. And one of the very big reported things, James Haskell, who's been in the news recently, who's quite a popular, he used to play for England and stuff like that. At one point, when he was playing for Saracens, he tackled their brand new rookie winger and stuff like that. And it was quite a hard tackle. It was quite rough, quite aggressive. He flew in from about 10 feet out. And he actually got removed from the game. Now, the reason wasn't because of the dirty tackle. The reason was because the ref knew and said, I know that you could have made that same tackle from 5 yards out and achieved the same result. You wanted to hit him hard, and there's an element, because it was one of his first games in higher tier rugby, that he was still kind of almost learning. Like he wasn't used to it. So he was almost a defenseless player. There's an element of that. Right. Which I think is something that should be included, because it kind of, if you've been in the NHL 1 year compared to someone that's been in it for 5 years, the level of, kind of where your brain's at and stuff like that isn't going to be the same. So it's a bit different to me.
Yeah. And I just really hope there's some major changes that go on. Well, I don't think we're going to see any for this season of the NHL, because the NHL is never proactive about anything. This is just where they are. It's a fact. People can come at me for that. And the fact that I of course one day would like to work for an NHL hockey team, but that doesn't mean that you can't. There's this idea of, oh well, when you work for somebody, you have to ignore all the bad things about them. Well, no. This is where the NHL is at right now. And I sincerely hope that they sit down over this summer and have a real good reflection on how their game is played, because it's been like this for so many years. I still think that bless you.
Thank you.
I still feel that Tim Peel has been woefully just used as the scapegoat by this league. They fired him because he said the thing that has been happening for years, for decades in this league. We have full proof now that literally certain teams have won games and won championships because of how the game is officiated, not because of how skilled those teams are. And we've seen it for years where the heavier, bigger, and oftentimes dirtier teams end up winning because they get more leniency with the rules, because it has to be called fairly. Call it fairly by calling the rules. Manage the game by calling the rules. You'll manage the players by calling the rules. It's that simple.
Yeah. You don't. I think almost the game management side of it needs to be taken away.
Well, but you manage the game by calling the rules. I don't understand where people are like separating the two, and they are. But when you manage a game, you are calling the rules so that it doesn't get out of hand. Because if the game gets out of hand, you've lost at game management.
Yeah.
Right? You haven't managed tempers. You haven't managed the players and the way the game's going. And if the game is going dirty, you have to call the penalties. But they have to be called based on the rules. Anyways, things get fabricated all the time in the NHL, and it's pretty awful to just watch penalties just kind of happen or not.
So I think we will get pretty close to ending it there, because I don't think either of us are pretty close. But the one thing that I will say, and a sport that we don't often comment on, but a sport that has just knows its target audience, has gone, right, cool, let's have some fun with it, is NASCAR, because they impressed me this week. Because of all the things that NASCAR could do, and now there's a lot of people that are down on NASCAR and all this kind of stuff, but they do, they are NASCAR, it's how they are. But they had a race on dirt. They basically were like, it's however, and it wasn't even like an anniversary or something like that, I don't think. They just were like, oh, at the next race circuit, the owners said, hey, I could make it a dirt track. NASCAR went, cool, do it. And basically this guy took this NASCAR circuit, covered it in a layer of dirt, and all the teams turned up with befuddled look, and NASCAR's went, race on dirt.
Yeah, and they did it.
Went, oh, okay. And it was quite fun.
Yeah, this was on Monday the 29th.
Yep.
And I didn't even know about this. Yeah, it was all on dirt at Bristol Motor Speedway.
Yep.
Which is where is that? It's in the United States, obviously.
Yep.
And yeah, that's great. You know what? I credit NASCAR because they've had a lot of backlash for trying to get away from their the issues that they've had in their past with the types of people that tend to gravitate to NASCAR.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. But
that's all I'll say about it. But so they've tried to get away with that, or from that. They've received a ton of backlash because of it. And so they've gone, okay, we need to do something different and something cool. What can we do? Let's have a race on dirt. Spectacular.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
They basically went, what can we do? Let's put this on dirt. And it was hilarious to me because instantly the fields changed. Because you had all these young guys who, like one of them, they were saying, like, has basically gone, like, he was an American version of the not Drive to Survive, like gamer to racer kind of thing. He raced in iRacing. He was very good at NASCAR iRacing, won the championship, and one of the teams went, "Hey, get in our car." He's then since been very successful, but there's no simulation of driving a NASCAR on dirt.
Nope.
So he had awful weekends. But then the guys that grew up dirt track racing, like, I have never seen a demonstration. Like, this to me, because I will admit, there's some people that say NASCAR, oh, you just turn left. Well, no, you're not doing that, because if it was just turning left, everyone would do it. I
say that.
It's a left turn through 3 dimensions, because the corner is there, like, 60 degrees of banking. The cars aren't ever settled. It's amazingly complex. But the guys that had driven on dirt, who then had to figure out how to set up a NASCAR to race on dirt, then went and did it. Like, seeing some of these drivers demonstrate this is actually how talented we are, as they went sideways at 75 with 850 brake horsepower and no traction control or anything helping round this circuit, and added, like, the average lap speed was 91 miles an hour on dirt.
And the corners were banked still as well.
Yeah. So you're power sliding through 3 dimensions on a loose surface.
Yeah. Amazing.
I don't think half of the Formula One grid could do that at 91 miles an hour. Just we'll end the podcast now. But for me, that was just I wanted to highlight that was a motorsport going, let's give it a go.
Well, that was a sport.
Is what they need to embrace.
Yeah.
Like, this to me should be something to Formula One, MotoGP, everything like that. Just go, just every now and again, have a bit of fun with it.
I think that's a lesson for every league. Yeah. So many leagues. The NHL is just notorious for whenever a team does something fun, it gets belittled and scrutinized by all the hockey people because it's not the way things are done, right? Mm-hmm. The Carolina Hurricanes started these fun, they called them the Storm Surge. They started these fun post-game celebrations on the ice with all their fans doing all this different stuff. Like they had a football touchdown pass one game where they they took someone's glove and lined up at center ice, and somebody was back to pass and threw the glove down the ice into the corner, and the guy caught it, and it was a touchdown, and everybody went nuts. And all the hockey people were going, "This is stupid. This is house league bush crap, blah, blah, blah. This isn't professional," right? Well, they still do it now because it's fun. And the NASCAR thing was fun. So people need to, sports are supposed to be fun in the end. There's a certain way to do certain things, but be fun. The Vegas Golden Knights wear, what are they called? Like metallic gold helmets sometimes. And they're shiny and they look stupid, but it's fun. So we have fun here. And we want more people to have more fun in the end. Yeah. So we wish better luck next week to all the losers. The NHL continues to be the biggest loser right now. So we wish better luck next week to them.
Yeah.
And everyone else. That's pretty good, I think.
Yeah. More stuff like that, I would say. More stuff like racing on dirt. I don't want a Formula One race on dirt. I don't want that.
I think that would be too much.
That would be too much.
But they are doing fun things.
They are doing
right. They're rearranging Australia. They've gone to places they haven't gone before. They're doing it. So it's happening. But anyways, Bye.
Bye.